Exactly 2 weeks ago today, I started this experiment to see whether or not waking up at the same time every day would benefit my sleep. Now, it might have been a little bit of a mistake to start this on the weekend 2 weeks ago, as I usually like to lie until at least 9 o'clock. But I was really keen to get started to see how this would help. Safe to say the first 2 days were pretty tough. I don't know about you, but I benefit greatly from having some preset sort of tasks in the morning, or maybe an occasion in the morning to get up for. Otherwise, I really lack motivation to wake up in the morning. In the past, I would just set my alarm for a time that benefited the task I had in that morning. So, in other words, I would never get up just for the sake of getting up. I always got up to do something or for an event, whatever time that was. So, for example, you can have a look here at the variability of my sleep schedule before I started this experiment. You can see the difference between when I went to bed and when I woke up, and it varied a lot. Now, in this particular section, it looks even more drastic because I went on a skiing holiday where we had to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning on 2 of the days for our travelling day and our leaving day. And going back even further to a slightly more normal time period for me, you can still see there is a lot of variation with the wake-up time. So if you didn't believe me before, then hopefully you do now. I was very inconsistent. Now I want you to have a look at the past 2 weeks and see how much more consistent the wake-up time has been. Now, please ignore the light blue bar, as that was the one day I didn't wear my watch to bed as it needed to charge. What you can also notice is that my bedtime actually varied quite a lot, even though my wake-up time was pretty consistent. And this is an important thing to note, is that if I really want my sleep quality to increase even further, it's going to be very beneficial to try and go to bed roughly at the same time every day. Yeah, I'd aim for about 11, but you can see on that schedule that it's fairly inconsistent still. And as a student, it is hard to go to bed at a consistent time because you have lots of fun sort of random events in the evening. For example, I went to watch a rugby match on a Friday evening, then I went to watch varsity ice hockey on a Monday, which is completely random but also really fun. And it means that I end up staying up later than I normally would. Anyway, as the first week went on, I had lectures, gym sessions, meetings to be up for, so I didn't find it particularly difficult waking up at my usual time. It was just business as usual. However, the interesting thing that I wanted to observe was whether or not my body automatically would wake up at the same time after doing this for a few days. Now, clearly the first week was too soon to be able to see this kind of repetition. And soon enough, the weekend rolled around again. So I had absolutely nothing to do on this Saturday last week until about 11 o'clock, which usually would mean I'd sleep till about 9:30 and then give me about an hour and a half to get ready and go. However, due to this new routine, I gained an extra 2 hours of time that morning. And this has been a pretty clear advantage, is that by waking up early on the weekend, you actually gain time. And I do generally appreciate quite a slow, relaxed morning with my coffee and my porridge, but it also gave me time to focus on this YouTube channel, which gives me a lot of pleasure and enjoyment. So without even looking at the quality of my sleep as an advantage, I already gained more time to do things that were enjoyable or good for me. Now, as the second weekend rolled past, I was able to get to bed quite early on that Sunday. I was lights out by about 10 o'clock. And the next morning, I actually had my first morning where I noticed that I was starting to wake up before my alarm went off. I definitely wasn't wide awake, but I could definitely start to feel myself waking up, and I was not in a deep sleep when my alarm went off, which is the worst thing. And this was effectively the 10th morning of the experiment when I started to see this take effect. And one thing to note at this point is that I actually use a sunrise alarm clock, which I am a massive fan of. And I don't really know how much evidence there is out there for it as to how beneficial it is, but what I do know is that having light to wake you up in the morning can be really helpful, as it obviously simulates the sun. And when you're in those really dark, dreary winter months, it can be so much harder to wake up in the morning compared to a nice summer morning when the sun's up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So mine works by slowly releasing light from about 0% to 100% brightness over a time period that you can specify. So I specify 30 minutes before I want my alarm to go off. That's when it will start to brighten up. And I find that this helps me to sort of wake up slowly rather than just being, blackout asleep in a dark room and then suddenly my alarm just blaring, and it's not a nice way to wake up. Whereas with a light, it's a little bit more relaxing and comfortable to wake up. Now, as we move into the second week, it was very similar. I had things to be awake for, therefore it was much easier to get up. But it did start to feel more like clockwork actually at this point. I should admit that I only actually really had one other morning where I felt like I woke up before my alarm. The rest of the time I did need the alarm to wake me up. so this routine hadn't been fully ingrained yet, but that's expected. So I'm making this video on about the 15th day of the experiment, and this is a Saturday, by the way. And I obviously chose again to wake up at 7:30. And comparing this to the first day, which was also a Saturday, it was so much easier to wake up. And it's allowed me to just get going immediately, write a script for this video and film the entire thing, all by roughly coffee time. And this actually continues to be my favourite part of the experiment so far, is just giving me that little bit more time on the weekend to do things that add value to my life. I could choose to do rest, or I could choose to do sort of creative things, which I personally love to do. So, will I continue this routine? Absolutely. And I know that when I finish university, this routine is likely going to have to change. But that's kind of what life is all about, is adapting your routine around the stage of life that you are in. You know, I currently don't have any kids, I don't have many responsibilities, I don't have a job, so it's quite easy and simple for me. But, you know, as I move into having a job, getting married, there will be more responsibilities and I'll have to adjust my time, likely to get up earlier and probably likely to go to bed earlier too. Now, not to discredit everything I've just talked about, but you might remember when I introduced this experiment, I talked about Russell Foster. And one thing he also talks about, well, I'll just play you the clip, that'll be much easier to explain.
How important is it to wake up at the same time every day?
I think it is important because it reinforces all of the sort of signals that regulate the circadian system. So eating at the same time, getting light exposure at the same time, that all acts to stabilize. However, having said that, you know, there's going to be an occasion where you have a party. You're going to get up late, you know, and sleep is very dynamic. And I really can't emphasize, one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
And because it's such a dynamic and variable behavior, we can, you know, it can be tweaked and it's flexible.
So there will be times in my future when I have a very late night, and there'll be times when I have a very early morning, and that's okay. Sleep is dynamic, so I can cope. But as long as I have a consistent routine, I will be waking up at the same time every day. So, I will see you tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.